Hi guys, welcome to the discussion for our loneliness survey. The survey involves males and females aged 18 to 34. I'm Georgia. I go to Nottingham Trent University and I'm in my second year studying English, Literature and Media.
Hi, I'm Connor. I'm a student at Cardiff University and I'm studying a Masters in International Relations.
Hey, I'm Dylan. I'm also in second year at NTU studying English and Media.
Morning everyone, I'm Jade. I'm roommate in business and I've got two little children, so if you hear them in the back, apologies for that.
Good morning everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm from Counselling West Bridgeford and I'm a psychotherapist. So back in September, I ran this survey looking at loneliness. It's called Connection Inventory. So as well as providing one-to-one counselling and therapy, I also wanted to be able to contribute in some way to the mental health of the general public. And I thought, and loneliness is something I'm really passionate about. And so I thought this might be a good way to actually learn something about loneliness, because it was an epidemic before COVID, and it's certainly a problem now and will continue to be. So the research was actually 20 questions which are around indicators of loneliness. So it wasn't, do you feel lonely? It was, do you feel that you're close to people? Can you find companionship when you want it? Those kinds of questions. And the answers are always, sometimes, rarely, and never. And depending which answer was given, a score was assigned to it. And then what we can do is then look at that, then gives us a loneliness score. And what was absolutely incredible, I ran this in September of last year, was we had over 900 people actually respond, which was beyond what I would ever imagine. So what this means is we've got this amazing amount of data. What I then did was got in touch with NTU, because I'd got all this data, and said, please, can you find someone to help me get my head around this and do something with it, because it doesn't really give any answers, it just asks more questions. So that's how Georgia came on board, which has been fantastic. And what Georgia was really interested in, because we noticed that it's the younger people that are actually the loneliest, and this is consistent with other research that's been done in the UK, so it's not any different to what others have found. And so we wanted to really take a look at that, and especially something that just popped out of the data is that certain questions, the responses that men were giving were quite different to the ones that women were given. And that's the point of us being here today. We've got two men and two women to be able to come and actually say why we think there might be these differences in two particular questions, which I'll come on to in a minute, why it might be the case and what maybe can be done about it. So there's two questions, one where it seemed to contribute more to loneliness in men, and another where it seems to contribute to loneliness more in women. Hopefully I'm doing my best to explain this well. So what I want to start with is that it seemed to be that men struggled more with finding companionship when they want it compared to women. And so I'm here as the resident old person, so I won't be involved in this discussion. I'm just here as facilitator if it's needed of what I already know from this group of people. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more just making sure we're not still here in 5 hours time talking about it. So I'm just going to kind of keep time. I'll go off the video and and over to you. And I wonder, Connor, if you might just get us started, and I'm just going to disappear and leave you to it. See you in about 15 minutes.
So the sort of parameters of companionship is sort of one thing I have a question about. So what do we define as companionship before we really go into it? Does anyone have any thoughts?
I'd say, in terms of this question, I'd say more friendship than relationship.
Yeah, me too.
Seeking comfort in your friends. I think that's what it's trying to say.
Yeah, totally. And I think men often. I don't want to say in general, because I think making generalizations in the context of especially like mental health isn't necessarily always helpful, but like I often find with men that they are reluctant to be emotionally available and be emotionally receptive as well. So it's quite often a case where men don't really discuss their feelings a lot. And I think obviously discussing your feelings is integral to forming friendships with people. You can't really form friendships without at least some level of emotion. Otherwise, they just tend to be acquaintanceships. But yeah, I think because men are sometimes, well, quite often in my experience, quite reluctant to share their feelings, it does make it hard to strike friendships, I think.
I think there's just following on from you, Connor, I think there's an element that men's relationships can sometimes be quite transactional, if that's the right word, in terms of like, you know, you both like football or you both like to talk about whatever, and it is less emotional. It's not like, you know, how are you feeling, how's you know, how is, I don't know, whatever. Do you know what I mean? I think you're right. I think there's that lack of openness to being emotional and vulnerable potentially with each other, which girls generally, you know, tend to be more open about. That could be from, you know, the way we're all brought up, where traditionally, you know, boys don't cry and girls are allowed to show their emotions. It probably stems from something along those lines, maybe, potentially.
Yes, yeah, no, I think you're very correct in the sense that a lot of male friendships are situational. It tends to be sort of like there is a mutual reason to be friends with each other almost. Like you said, like to do with football or to do with like some sort of material interest, as opposed to just two people that have happened to cross paths and form a friendship in that perspective.
I think in this question, I think I'm personally quite lucky because I feel like I've got a lot of friendships with my guy friends that are based on emotion, and the stuff we have in common, the stuff we enjoy doing together, is just an added bonus. So I find that I have got friends, like you're right, saying that we have mutual interests, whether it's football or music or doing certain things. But I have found I've got friends that I've had since like the start of secondary school now, so near on to 9 years, and there's not been a constant sort of mutual interest in all that time. We've gone through things together. With, you know, having that experience together does build a stronger companionship in the terms of this question. So I think that, yeah, to talk about in general terms, it probably is right that men do struggle to find that emotional part of a friendship. But for me personally, I think I've been lucky to find that I've got a bit of both when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's kind of, you taking your point, Dylan, that with, you know, because you've had your friendship network for such a long time, and I see it in my friendship groups and friends of friendship groups as well. I wonder if there's an element that men generally form bonds at school, so then you grow up together and you build companionship that way, but actually it's potentially more difficult to build new friendships and reach out to make new networks. Potentially, is that harder for men than it is for women potentially? You know, because if you say, like you say, you've grown up with your friendship group, so you've got a strong bond, which is brilliant. I wonder if I don't know, is it more difficult to make new friends and get new companions as you get older?
I think it definitely has been hard at certain times, and I've found at uni that I've definitely got more girlfriends than I have guy friends, especially when it comes to talking about things, or, you know, just asking how someone is on a daily basis. I've definitely got more girlfriends that I do that with. But I live in a house of 7 people, including myself, and it's 4 guys and 3 girls. And for the majority of the time, I think all of us could sit down and just be honest and open with each other. I think it's really nice. But I think being here in lockdown right now in this house, and having the experience we have for the past few months during the pandemic has helped that bond. And I think if that wasn't around, we might not be as close as we are, might not be able to be as honest as we are with each other, because we're with each other every single day. So yeah, I do think it's hard to form new bonds with people, but also think it might get slightly easier as you get older, because I feel like the stage in your teens, late teens into early 20s might be still a really awkward stage for some people when it comes to being open and honest about things. And I don't think it should be, but I think it always will be. But yeah, I think in a weird way, the pandemic has helped a lot of people form closer relationships, especially with me and the boys in this house.
Yeah, I think like a lot of strong friendships are based on or come about from situations where you've gone through difficult times together, I guess. So you've opened up to someone finally. I think then from there on, I don't know about you guys, but for me, definitely, I think once I've opened up to someone, I find it a lot easier to open up to them again and again. So I think it's just the initial, do I want to be close? I don't know if it's kind of in your like subconscious that if you don't want to be like that close with someone, you're not going to open up to them. So it might be more difficult to form friendships with someone that you aren't opening up to, but it's kind of just that, do you want to be that close with them, I guess? Do you want to open up to them and have people that are like, just
Yeah, and I know the question was about how, well, the results were that men find it harder with companionship, but do you, like Georgia and Jade, do you find that surprising, or do you have your own personal struggles with finding companionship as well that you think weren't necessarily sort of presented in the results?
I don't think I was overly surprised, because I think, again, you can only kind of go on your own experiences and your own friendships and generalizations from that, I suppose. But I do think it potentially takes longer for guys to open up as a general rule of thumb than it would girls. So maybe it's, although saying that, I think maybe it's because I'm a bit older as well, but I think it is hard to make new friends and be, build companionships with people as you get older, because you guys got the benefit at the moment that you're at university, so there's lots of people you can potentially build relationships with, whereas as you get older you've got people that you work with potentially, or people that through work, and then that's got its own kind of barrier, because you don't feel like you can necessarily be vulnerable with people that you work with, because you've got a work kind of face that you've got to keep on, or whatever. So I think the thing that surprised me is the age bracket rather than the gender of it. Because I think it felt to me like the older you get, sometimes can be more difficult to get those companionships. Don't know how you feel, Georgia.
I definitely wasn't surprised, because I think there is such a stigma around men's mental health and men being seen as like, or thought of as weak if they were to open up to somebody about it. But with like me, I don't particularly find it that difficult to open up to people and like form companionships with people. But I mean, at university, I think we've had quite a difficult time where the majority of our university experience has been on, like, everything's been online, or we've been at home, so I haven't been able to form those close friendships. I was really lucky that I met Dylan in first year, because we became quite close friends. But apart from that, like, I've made friends, but I guess, like, I haven't really made friends that I'm like close with. And I would, text and be like, do you want to hang out? It's kind of just if you see them, it's like a hi, how are you? Let's get lunch together or something.
Yeah, I definitely am in a luckier position compared to the two of you, because I had the very vast majority of my undergrad, save the last bit of third year, was before the pandemic. So I kind of had the more or less the whole 3 years to be able to form closer friendships. So I must imagine it's created a huge obstacle, because I mean, I don't know about you two, but I definitely found in the first year of my degree, the friendships that I formed weren't really long lasting, that a lot of them were situational, depending on like who I'd met in Freshers Week and sort of who I'd mixed with at the start of my course. And they're not really people, by and large, they're not the people that I'm friends with now, save a couple. So
Yeah.
I should imagine that does create like quite a substantial obstacle, because I find since the start of my master's degree, everything has been online, because everything's been sort of post COVID or like during COVID. So it's like I haven't really made friends on that course, save people who did what I did and just went straight on from the politics course onto the master's course. So I had the benefit of knowing a couple of people from that, but I've not been able to form the new friendships purely because there's been no like physical proximity.
Do you think and Con, I don't know if you live with a group of people or if it's just yourself, but do you think that lack of how do you think that kind of contributes to that feeling of loneliness? I mean, Dylan, you said you've got a house full of people, and lockdown's kind of forced you to be quite close. Do you think that as I mean, I'm guessing there's still times when we all feel lonely. I know I certainly do sometimes, and I think even if you can be in a room full of people, if you've not got that real close connection, you can feel a bit like, oh, nobody really understands me, or nobody gets me, or whatever it might be. Do you think there's an element of that, if you can't open up to people and you've not got that closeness and that companionship, do you feel that does, from your perspective, contribute to loneliness or the feeling?
Well, I am thankful enough that I live with two housemates who I've been, one of them a man I've been friends with since my first year of university, and then one girl who I've been friends with since my second year of university. So thankfully I've still had people that I know very well and have opened up to beforehand. But I think a lot of the issue with having like a small amount of people that you live with as well, and also with people that live fairly independent lives, so we don't spend huge swathes of time together, it definitely does contribute towards that feeling of loneliness, especially like now when you can't just go outside and see one of your friends because it's illegal. And like it certainly is quite impactful when you can, like, the people that I do live with, it has brought us closer together to a degree, though, I think, because we've had sort of like that shared experience. It's like you were saying, Dylan, it's like the shared sort of experiences and longevity also comes into it as well, I think, in terms of like forming proper companionship. But I found sort of like people I don't live with that I'm friends with, it's that lack of experience together with the pandemic that has sort of widened the rift in those friendships a bit. I don't know how anyone else feels with that.
Yeah, I find the exact same thing. That I mean, some of my best friends that I've been in contact with pretty much every day since the start of the pandemic, that still goes on. But some people that I would consider good friends that I maybe haven't seen probably since the end of college now, so near into 2 years, this pandemic has basically made our friendship non-existent. And there's no bad blood involved or anything like that, but everyone's got their own stuff to deal with nowadays. And whether that's uni, whether it's the pandemic itself, everyone's just doing their own thing. And I've not been disappointed by it, because I know that a lot of people will go through the same thing with friendships. But it's like you're saying as well, Jade, about feeling lonely even when you're in a group of people. Because even though I live with 6 other people, there'll be times when I can go a day in the house with everyone here without seeing anyone, and it seemed pretty mad to think that you can go a whole day without seeing 6 other people. But because everyone's got uni work or wants some alone time, or was maybe seeing significant others, stuff like that, it's difficult sometimes. So sometimes when I go downstairs and only one person's in the kitchen, it's really nice because then you remember that, oh, you're not alone in the house, and 9 times out of 10 this person will talk to you, ask how you are, and you'll do the same, and you'll just have a, not necessarily a deep conversation, but just a pleasant conversation, some human interaction. I know that some people who are living on their own during the pandemic, it must be like insanely hard for them to cope, right?
I think it emphasizes it, doesn't it? Because I suppose in some ways we're quite lucky that we have got people within our houses that we can talk to and interact with, like you say. But when it's just you, I suppose it's harder because you've only got these virtual get-togethers. And I know Michelle's waiting there to kind of raise along.
Yeah, it's a way of butting in gently and politely. Yeah, because I mean, I had that discussion for 15 minutes. That's why I just kind of popped in. And I suppose one thing, perhaps before we move on to the next question, that I'm really curious at, and what a great discussion, by the way, is the really hard question is what can be done about it when someone, thinking about men, where if finding and developing that companionship, if that's the right phrase to use, if they struggle with that, if you had any, don't like using the word advice, but I can't think of a better one. So if you had any advice or things for people who are struggling, what would you say? I guess Dylan and Connor in particular being well, but any all of you actually. I'd take that back.
Yeah, that's quite a hard one, really. I'm really not sure what advice I'd give. It's yeah, I feel like I just come from a really privileged position in that sort of thing because I do have that support network. But yeah, I just have a lot of sympathy for those people who will be struggling, especially guys who don't think they can have anyone to talk to. And if this is the sort of stuff's been going on for the past year, then yeah, it must be really, really hard.
I know it sounds incredibly cliche, but I think it's very important to make sure you touch base with your friends, especially like friends who are guys. Like I feel like the girls that I'm friends with, I can just send them a text or I can send them a post I found funny or something to just touch base. But sometimes I think, especially with my friends who are guys, I'd forget to do that. Or like there's more of a sort of emotional block there for some reason. I sort of second guess myself and I'm thinking like, oh, will they want me to send that text? Will they want to hear from me necessarily? Like, so I think it's important of like sort of overcoming that boundary and sort of being able to be like, I need to touch base with this person because I need to make sure that they're all right. Which sounds, I mean, it sounds like really obvious advice, but in practice, it's not necessarily always the case that you do that.
Yeah, I think it's creating that by following on from Connor, by actually reaching out and taking that active step to say, look, are you okay? Do you want to have a virtual cup of tea or whatever? So it creates that opportunity to talk and open up, which I think is one of the biggest things, which I know obviously there's lots going on campaign wise for mental health to kind of raise awareness of, it's okay to talk about your feelings and everything else for men. And I think it's just continuation of that, really.
I've just realised I asked the wrong question because it was about giving advice. Well, actually, I'm wondering, the question that actually follows on from that is what can be done about it, which isn't what the people themselves who may be struggling, it's what generally can be done about it. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I think Connor's point kind of touches on that, because Connor's point was about him reaching out to his friends, not from him being sorry, Connor, I'm assuming this is my understanding of what you said. Please correct me if I've misunderstood what you said. But him reaching out to his friends to check that they're okay and reaching out, as opposed to Connor reaching out for himself. Had I understood what you kind of said there, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, it's a systematic issue, isn't it? I think the fact that, like, obviously I want to talk to my friends because I want to talk to my friends. It's necessarily a case of like I am the intermediate counselor. But I think, yeah, no, I think to a degree it's like, because my friends do check up on me as well. It's not like I'm sort of micromanaging people's lives. It's like yeah, no, I think there are a lot of deeper running issues with people in general, not necessarily just men, not men at all, just men at all. But like, yeah, no, I think it's also, I mean, it also calls into question what is being done about people's mental health in general, not necessarily in terms of a person with their friends, but with people in general, what is being done, say, by sort of, you know, the government or, you know, mental health systems that we have in place in this country. Is there enough being done? And the answer to the question, I mean, certainly in my opinion, is no.
Yeah, definitely.
That feels like an excellent point to move on to the next question, because I think we could, again, as I said, we could be talking about this all day. It's such a interesting subject, and I'm really, so interesting to listen to you all. So yeah, we can sort of moving on to the next question really, and focusing on women and this idea of feeling part of a group of friends. So women are less likely to feel part of a group of friends than maybe men will. And again, it's your response to that, your own experience, and yeah, just why do you think that is, and what can be done about it? And I'll see you later.
I think this comes down to, it kind of links into what Dylan was saying a moment ago on the last question. I find all of my guy friends, and I tend to have more guy friends than I do girlfriends. All of my guy friends have been friends since school or since university, and they've grown up together. Whereas a lot of my girlfriends, we've kind of collected each other through the years. Do you know what I mean? From different groups or different things we've been to. Some of us have, started off as the girlfriends or the wives, and then we became friends, and it feels less like a friendship group and more like lots of little friendships. Whereas I think guys, from my experience, they like yourself, Dean, you've got a group of friends that you've kind of grown up with, so you've got a friendship group with obviously lots of other friends as well, but I don't know what other people's opinion is or experience is.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that at home I've got a lot of friends and a big friendship group with people that are like all genders, so not just females. So it's kind of like I do feel part of my group. I don't know if it's because the balance, like the all genders like balances it out, because I mean generally, I don't know if this is just like a generalization, but in my friendship anyway, it kind of, the men usually like balance out the females, kind of like, because I know being friends with a lot of girls, I feel like often it can turn out quite catty, and situations can turn sour quite quickly. But with my male friends, I feel like they tend to say it how it is, and they're quite blunt with like, no, that's not right, you can't say that, like whatever. But in terms of, I know that in like secondary school, I definitely felt like it was a lot harder to make friends. And I felt like I would go from friendship group to friendship group, not really feeling part of that group, but just trying to kind of stay on the outside before, finding another group. As like, I don't know if that sounds a bit, I don't know, weird, but yeah, I struggled a lot in secondary school with finding a group of friends that were my group of friends, instead of, oh, I'm just hanging out with these people because I'm friends with one person from that group. And it wasn't until like year 10 that I made a strong friendship group, and I'm still friends with them today. So I don't know if like boys you find like that, or?
Unfortunately, I wasn't surprised by the results of this question, because I'm not saying it's solely women, but in my experience, at least, I found that when people get excluded from friendship groups or pushed out, it's usually girls that I see it in, whether it's girls I'm friends with and stuff like that. I know that, to use an experience, my ex-girlfriend, when she always used to get horrible stuff happening in her friendship group and stuff like that. It seems like people are falling out constantly, and it's the same with a lot of my girlfriends. I just don't understand why that happens, but I'm not saying it doesn't happen in men at all, because some horrible stuff has happened that I've seen, and bullying and stuff like that, so people get shunned or don't feel welcome in a group of friends. But yeah, I just don't, it's like with the first question as well. I don't understand. The first question, I understand slightly more why men find it harder with companionship, because there is a stigma, but I don't see why there's such a sort of competitive nature when it comes to a group of friends, whether that's male or female. And I just don't understand why there's not just sort of like a level out of power. It seems like someone's constantly trying to one up each other. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that or not, has seen it, but yeah, I'm not sure. I think as well, I can't remember what word you said, Connor, but I think it's definitely a societal thing as well, not necessarily conscious, but I feel because for years now, women have had to sort of fight or compete, whether that's against men or with other women. And yeah, like I said, I don't think it's a conscious thing all the time, but I feel like that sort of competitive nature does come through in all walks of life, especially females, and that's not necessarily their fault or anything like that, because I think, yeah, it's definitely a systemic or societal sort of thing that women have to be better than one another, and yeah, like I said before, one up each other. And I think it's really sad sometimes because it ruins friendships.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, yeah, I was just about to say a similar thing, actually. It is quite a societal reflection, in that I think a lot of the reason that men seem to, in a lot of people's perception, be able to clear the air incredibly quickly, I think somewhat stems from the fact that men are sort of raised with the ability to be just bold and loud about things that they like disapprove of or dislike or disagree with. Like they've been raised sort of being told you can speak up whenever you take an issue with something. Whereas, I mean, I don't want to really speak on what a woman's experience is being raised, because I'm not one, but like I think it is sort of instilled in women that you kind of have to keep, like, not to constantly moan, to keep things to yourself. And do you think that maybe plays a part in why it is sort of behind the scenes as opposed to being as active and aggressive to a degree as it is with men?
Yeah, I think you made a good point there, Connor, because I think, you know, even the best parents in the world, it's not like they sit you down and go, right, you're a girl so you can't talk. But I think you do, you know, I think there's that stigma that women do moan, you know, and I think we talked about on the last question, and I think maybe somewhere subconsciously we're all conscious that, okay, we don't want to seem like we're moaning, we'll just not mention it and we'll just brew it up, rather than, like you say, just saying, look, this is my issue, can we fix it? And I think sometimes, I mean, I've had it where friends have been a bit bold and said, actually, Jade, what you've done here has really, you know, annoyed me or whatever. And I've been a bit like, oh, how dare you? And then actually, in hindsight, it's that's made our friendship stronger, because we've just resolved it there and then, rather than her kind of going, oh, I'm just not going to see Jade anymore, I'm just not going to talk to her, or whatever, you know. So I think we've still got a way to go, and I don't think that's I think everyone's trying, but there's still those stigmas that sit within a society that even that we don't necessarily realise that we've got, that we need to kind of overcome, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I went to an all-girls secondary school, I forgot to mention that earlier. I think being at like an all-girls school from the ages of 11 to 16, I think I really noticed how like petty and catty and, you know, difficult it is, like girls can be, and how difficult it is to because a lot of people don't like confrontation. I know I didn't like confrontation back in, I mean, no one really does, but in secondary school especially, I would never have thought about calling someone out for something that they'd done, because I didn't want the backlash of those girls then being, you know, catty. So I guess being at such what's the word, such a I guess vital few years of growing up, I think it then kind of sticks with you. So girls can still be, you know, they don't want to open up to you, they don't want you to come into their friendship group because that's their friendship group. So I don't know if that stays with them as they get older, because they've kind of had it instilled into their minds at such a young age, like, oh, this is our group, no one else is allowed in. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. But then I guess as soon as I got to sixth form, it was completely different, because I went to a mixed sixth form. So it was just like different, because friendship groups were then obviously mixed. It was a lot more open, and there was a lot more confrontation in sixth form than there was at secondary school. But it wasn't like petty, because I think where we were mixed, I know it's another generalization, but the guys would say it's how it is. And also I guess people between, like, you're a lot different when you're 12 to when you're, you know, 17. So I don't know, I think people finally found the freedom to be able to say what they want to say without feeling like, oh no, I've got a massive group of girls that are kind of come and like get me, I guess. So I guess I don't know.
I think, because going back to the question around its contribution to loneliness, I don't know if you find it, Georgia. Do you find that? Because I wouldn't necessarily, maybe because I'm a bit older, and like Dylan said, we're busy doing our thing, so I've got kids to look after and a business to run and everything else, so I don't necessarily now feel so much like I'm part of a friendship group, although I've got friends obviously I talk to, and lockdown's definitely made it harder, because I think Dylan touched on it earlier, we've not got a lot to talk about. It's like, what are you up to? Nothing. I've sat in my house and looked after the kids. So those rifts have kind of extended a bit. But so I wouldn't necessarily say I'm part of a friendship group, although I've got friends. And I think, but I wouldn't necessarily, from my perspective, I don't think that contributes to loneliness, to my loneliness anyway. And so I was, in terms of the question, that's not been my experience. Obviously it has for lots of other people, because that's the results of the question. I just wondered what you kind of thought of that, George, because you do feel part of a friendship group.
Yeah. I think, although I feel I'm part of a friendship group, I think, especially at the moment, I don't speak to my friends like every single day. You know, I'm busy doing my thing, they're doing their thing. And I guess I still do get lonely. Like sometimes I still feel like quite lonely, sometimes, because, yeah, I guess because I haven't spoken to them, or, you know, yeah, like we're definitely, like, I'm still part of a friendship group, but just because we don't speak every day doesn't mean we're necessarily not as close. But just at the moment it's just difficult to, like, everyone's struggling with their own thing. Like, I don't expect them to, you know, message me 24/7 every day to feel like I'm still friends with them, if that makes sense. Like, 'cause I know who my friends are, I know that I don't want that to change. I guess I like who my friends are, so, like, we've been friends for years and years. I don't feel the need to talk to them every day. But then I guess on the other hand, sometimes it does get lonely. I think especially during the first lockdown, I struggled a lot, but I think it's just because that was like a whole new like change. That was a whole new routine that you had to kind of make for yourself. Whereas now it's a lot better. I don't feel like I get as down or lonely or whatever any like really as much. But yeah, especially during the first lockdown, it was a lot more difficult. So I think the lockdown basically has quite a big part to play on this situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's interesting because both me and you then have both said kind of the opposites of the results. So you feel part of a friendship group but still feel lonely at times, and I don't feel part of a friendship group, but I obviously still get lonely at sometimes. But I don't feel that being part of a friendship group or not part of a friendship group is related to that in that aspect. If you know what I mean. I think it is just the nature of this current situation and being lonely. Sorry, Michelle.
No, that's okay, and it's just a great discussion, and I'm always sorry to come and disturb it, because I was just like listening, and thank you so much all of you to sharing so much and contributing so much of yourselves to this discussion. I think what you're just saying about actually I feel part of a group of friends. I'm not in touch with them every day, but no, that's okay. But sometimes I feel lonely, and I think that's the great thing about the connection inventory questions, is that they were 20 questions, because it's not just about having friends, feeling companionship. It's a whole raft of various aspects. It's our intimate partner, which can be our best friend as well as maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend. It's about feeling part of a group of friends. It's knowing ourselves and being comfortable with ourselves, and also feeling part of something bigger than ourselves. It's actually all of that that actually contributes to feelings of connection or loneliness. I'm so grateful for today. That discussion was amazing, and I'm sorry that we're coming to an end. It's like it was actually quite hard not to jump in and go join in. I really wanted to, because I was hearing is, and I really noticed as an observer that contrast between, on the one hand, men, it's struggling to talk about how they're feeling and actually have that kind of get that intimacy, that connection in that way, and yet on the other hand, when it comes to a group of friends, actually being more likely to say, hey, that's not okay, I don't want to say keep the peace, but actually react in a more constructive way in friendship groups when there's disagreement. And I thought that was really interesting contrast. And yeah, if we've got more time, I'd love to continue that discussion. But yeah, super. I wonder if I just want to make sure you've all had the opportunity to say everything you wanted to. With anything you'd like to add before we close out today?
No, I think I'm all good. I said what I needed to say.
Same. Thank you for coming to the discussion today, guys. I found it really interesting to see everyone's different viewpoints on the survey results. And yeah, thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.